I'm going to continue the notes from Monday, Law of Cosines. Okay, so going back to this example down here at the bottom, remember that we're using Law of Cosines because we don't have an angle side pair. So the side opposite this angle is not available. So this is when Law of Cosines is needed. So I'm going to go ahead and label these different corners or vertices so that I know what to reference. So that'll be C, that'll be little b, that'll be little a. Okay, so now I've got this angle here, so I've got this pair, but again, we're using law of sines, so we're not really worried about that. So I do have an angle here, so that's what I'm going to focus on is if I have C, I'm going to set it up with C squared first and the cosine of that C, or of that angle theta. Okay, so if I write the formula, C equals A squared plus B squared minus 2AB cosine C. I'm just going to fill in what I know. Okay, so we don't know that side, C squared. I know A squared, or 5 squared. I know B, so 8 squared. And then 2 times those same sides. And times the cosine of the angle we're given. Okay, so again, key thing here is just make sure you plug this in the calculator right. Most of the mistakes happen from just not even, you write down the right formula and you get it all set up, then you plug it in and you put exponent here, a square there, and we just make those little mistakes. So get this up in the calculator. You can use any calculator for this. Again, I'm going to square root this here all in one step, so I'm just going to enter the whole thing into the calculator instead of doing it step by step. Also, make sure if you're using the blue calculator, you see that DEG, which means degree. If we're using the yellow calculator, remember we have to go into settings and change it from, radians to degrees. All right. Oh, you know what? I think when you plug in this whole thing, you got to make sure you enclose their whole equation or expression or in the parentheses here. So I got to go back up and just make sure that I didn't need one more extra parenthesis here. Okay, ends up being the same thing. Okay, so C is equal to 4 point, we'll round out to the nearest hundredth, so 6.2. Okay, and there's no units here, so we'll just say 6.2. Okay, so now remember, we're solving the entire triangle. Okay, so I'm going to need to also find the other two angles. Well, now that I have an angle pair here, the C, I can use the law of sines. So we'll say the sine, or we're looking for the angle, so we're going to put the sine on top. 32 over 0.2 over 4.62. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and look for, it doesn't matter which angle you want, we'll go for B. So sine of B. And don't forget, when we're looking for angles, we need to use the inverse function. Okay, so I'm going to multiply both, or cross multiply here, but basically all I'm going to do is just move this 8 up here. So now it's sine of B is equal to 8. Make sure you guys can see that. Times sine of 32.2 over 4.6. 2. All right, so now remember, I've got to do the inverse sine of this. So I'm going to do sine -1 of this whole expression here, 32.2 over the 4.62. Okay, so I'm going to use the inverse sine here on my calculator. And remember on this one, I got to, and usually typically on most calculators, you got to use like the second function in order to get to it. It's a little different on the Inspire or the yellow hats. Times sine 32.2, all of that divided by 4.62. Now you notice how I enclose the degree 32.2 in parentheses. Make sure you do that. Otherwise, the calculator thinks you're dividing the 32 by that. Okay. Okay, so we end up with our angle B is 67.33 degrees. Okay, so then that's going to be 67.3, and then I'll just go ahead and find the difference between the difference of the sum of these angles and 180. So 180 minus 32 plus 67.3. Actually, no. We want to look at that a little different. I'm going to do 180 minus the sum of those two angles. So I'm going to close that in parentheses like so. There we go, 80.47 degrees. Now we've completely solved the triangle. Okay, so now onto this one. Now this one, I'm not given any angles in this case. So if I'm gonna have to look for an angle. So let's start up here. Okay, let's say we'll call that A, we'll call this B, we'll call that C. So that's little a, little b, little c. Okay, so I'm still gonna set it up the same. So let's go ahead and start with C. It doesn't really matter, and we'll just use this formula here. 7 squared. I'm going to fill in everything I know. Okay, 8 squared plus b, which is 9. And the same thing, those same two sides there, multiply times 2, times the cosine of c. Now our variable is here. We've got to isolate this cosine of c. And we're going to end up using the inverse sign, or inverse cosine like we did down here. So now it's going to be 49 equals 64. That's 81. 2 times 8 is 16. Times 9. It's going to be 144. Okay. Add these two together. 64 plus 81. It's going to be 145. Now just remember that this cosine and this 144, they are together by multiplication. So I can't just subtract that from this 145. But I can divide it away. So what I'm going to do first is subtract the 145. Okay. So I get minus 96 equal to negative 144 cosine of c. Now what I've got to do is divide this negative 144 from here. Okay. And that becomes positive. So now this is all equal to cosine of c. Now I could reduce that, but that's not really important because I'm going to be using the calculator to find that angle c anyways. So now I'm going to do the inverse cosine of that ratio, and that's going to give me my angle theta of c. So let's do, again, I'm going to have to do second inverse cosine, 96 divided by 144. And we get 48. Angle C is 48.19. So now, just like you did before with the last triangle, now I can use law of sines because I've got the pair, and then I find one more angle, and then I just use the difference of 180 to solve the rest of that triangle. You should be able to figure out the rest just by doing that. Okay?